Greetings, you watch Her Developer channel, where I develop a portal for music bands. In this video, I'm going to set up Docker for Laravel project for local development. Please do not push these solutions to production. This video will be long, I will show a lot of code. All the code will be available via the link in the description. And sorry, but I have to start with blah blah content. I have to say it. Docker is important. Docker is standard. For PHP developers, Docker is mandatory. Docker is useful for other languages and technologies. For example, I like to wrap front-end frameworks into Docker, but Docker is critical, important for PHP development. PHP strongly depends on development or server environment. Because PHP is scripting language, version of PHP, all extensions, operation systems is important and can affect the work. So today word of the day is consistency, environment consistency. The task for today is to ensure my project works on my machine, on other developers' machines, on the server and anywhere else in the same way. First rule for today: the entire team works in Docker. No exception. There should not be any instructions on how to work without Docker. I experienced those dark times without Dockerization. Back then, deploying the project was a nightmare, multiplied by number of people on the team. And it repeated every time an update was needed. If you have more than one container, and you always have more than one container, use Docker Compose. Docker Compose first version was a separated technology. Second version is official extensions of Docker. If you write Docker Compose through a heap10, it is first version. The new version is Python independent, and most of the claims about its use are not relevant. But I repeat, we don't use today's solution in production. First, I have to look at existing Laravel Dockerization solutions. It is official Laravel Sail and laradock. Maybe there are other ones, but I'm not really interested in it. So I don't recommend using them out of the box. There are many reasons. First of all, those solutions don't allow you and your team understand service-oriented approaches. When you're looking for a solution, you don't even think that you can take some service written on any technology and use it. You are limited by PHP and Laravel. The second problem: my practice show those solution often goes into production. Blindly copy and push to production. But if you don't use these solutions in productions, consistency is broken and project has two environments, one on the developer's machine and one on the servers. Go next. Those solutions use unfixed version of images. The versioning of Docker images works on the same principle as package manager versioning. If you haven't specified the patch version, the latest version, available version, will be installed. This means that the version of new developers and developers who started weeks ago may be different. And of course, in production, you also don't know which version you have. So, rule: use fixed images version with patch. And the last what I have to say: these decisions are difficult and heavy. They contain too many dependencies that you don't need it, and it potential could have a security vulnerabilities. And they don't think about optimization. They use Ubuntu like core images, what is not okay, it's heavy and have a bad performance. Instead, I recommended Linux Alpine. It is small, lightweight, fast and secure. But no matter what I say, Laradock and Laravel Sail are positive projects. There are cases where I recommended use it. First of all, if you are a beginner and learning, feel free to use them. But to my mind, it is better to learn how to set up PHP on local machine. And of course, use a ready-made solution if you need something to test or demonstrate quickly without thinking about a future of project. Or you need a peek at something, look into source code is a good idea. Most likely you have found a solution corrected than you can see in this video. So okay, I will Dockerize the project by myself. I go to project through dir, create Docker Compose YAML file. The first thing I need to do is declare a services section. Version options are deprecated in modern Docker Compose. The first service I need is a database, DB. If you are using MySQL, my recommendation, try Postgres. Postgres is incredibly cool. Even if you are a beginner, I recommend starting with it right away. I have to say, if you don't don't know why you need something else, use a relational database. NoSQL, Graph, Columnar, and other databases, only if you know why projects need it. But let's return to Docker. Most of the necessary services have already been developed by someone and packed. Let's go to website hub.docker.com. It is not the only one, but the main repository with ready-made Docker images. Enter what we want to find into the search input. For you, it will be Postgres. For me, Postgres. Postgres is a Postgres with ability to work with geospatial data. This is an extension and we can install it later. But I know that there will be a lot of work with geolocation in the project, so I am installing it right away. I'm going to Postgres page, click to Tags tab, and try to find a latest version. In my case, it was 16-3.4 Alpine. I specify this version as image in my DB service. Next, I set restart to unless stopped. In this video, all containers will restart unless stopped, but you need to know there are a lot of situations when container should turn up, do something, and turn down. For example, make some tests. Next, I recommend specify container name, because Docker Compose creates her own name and can make some mess, especially when you have multiple Dockerized projects on your machine. In my case, it is BH, short from Barnhart -db. And I should enter minimum environment for Postgres container. It should be database name, Postgres user, and Postgres password. Please do not hardcode these environments. It is bad practice. You should know that Dockers have access to .env file, and it is cool because Laravel use .env file too, and we already have one. In Docker Compose file, we can use $ and curly brackets and insert variable from .env file. Also, do not forget change .env file, and of course .env file example. Connection PGSQL, DB host I have entered in Docker container PHDB. DB port is 5432, is default Postgres port. Database name, DB username, and DB password. Enter whatever you want. Now, when we start container, database with name, user, and password will be created if it did not exist. And of course, I want to work with database on my host on my local machine. So I have to open port from container to host. In DB service, should write port on host machine, and port from container. And now I can test. Run Docker Compose app in daemon mode, waiting for the container to load, and go to DB Beaver. It is very cool tool for managing databases. I use it and can recommend it. You use whatever you want, but please don't ask to set up MySQL admin or Postgres admin. Sorry, but this is outdated. So go back to DB Beaver, create new connection, enter database name, user and password, localhost and port 5432. Database exists and also contains some entities. It is Postgres types, tables, and etc. And now it's time to clarify. Docker containers do not store anything. All data in the container exists as long as it is running. For test, I will create some test scheme, restart container, and as you can see, there are not test schemes, but we have to store data. So go to DB service into Docker Compose YAML file and add property volumes with first options data /var/libs PostgresSQL/data. This path is default path to data on PostgresSQL container. We must save this data. And DB data is top level volume, what I have to create now. So leave service section, create new section, name volumes. First volume is DB data and driver local Docker Compose app, and as you can see, volume app db data was created. Now I can use docker volume ls list command to see a volume list. App db data is interesting to me, so I use command docker volume inspect app db data, and I can see the path on the host where these data are stored. It's called top level volumes, columns. It is very useful. We cannot think about where to store the data, what rights should be given to them, and of course we can manage it using standard Docker commands like ls, run, and etc. There is only one left. I don't like the default name. The reason is the same as in containers naming. So enter my own name and remove old volume. And I should repeat, now we can restart containers. Volumes will not remove it without our commands. Okay, DB service is ready. Now I should create a service with PHP engine. This will be the main service where scripts are run. And now I should make a choice. What I should use for running PHP scripts? In my mind, we have three options. First of all, PHP FPM. It is a good stable solution. I have a lot of experience with it. There are no problems with it. And most part PHP developers understand how to work with it. Next option is Nginx unit. I have to be honest, I never worked with it, but you can Google a benchmark of Nginx unit. It looks like it is very fast and very optimized. And of course, you can use it at your own risk. And the last one is the famous Laravel Octane. One-time initialization should give an incredible increase in speed and optimization. And here I have to talk about choice. If a customer, some business contacts with me right now, and I will see the usual issues in the request, create update delayed, do some pivot data, and etc. I would not risk and choose PHP FPM. In this case, it is a proven technology for which is easy to find developers and administrators, and if you use Opcache, it can be equal or even faster than Octane. And my project is just like that. It does not need over optimization of PHP scripts, but I'm a developer. I need to develop myself. I want to know what kind of problem I might face when switching to Octane. And also I respect my future users, so I want to provide them the faster possibility solution. So the community choice title is awarded to PHP FPM, and my personal choice goes to Laravel Octane. I will take the risks, and if we choose Octane, then we need to make another choice, the engine or service which Octane will work. FrankenPHP, Roadrunner, and Swirl. FrankenPHP at the time of decision making is a new engine, and I don't want to be alpha tester. I got already risks with Octane. It is too much, but maybe you are from the future where Franken has developed so much that he is looking for Sarah Connor. And choosing between Roadrunner and Swirl, I choose Swirl because of its unique features. This is a completely subjective choice. Maybe I will regret it. I also still do not understand how to apply this feature in my project, but maybe because I didn't work with them. And the last Swirl choice for today. We got two repositories, Open Swirl or Core Swirl or Regular Swirl. I will choose Regular Swirl, but again, it's subjective. So far, disagreements in developers' teams do not have effect to my project. Okay, let's go to code. First of all, I have to install Laravel Octane. Choose Laravel Swirl as server or engine, and you should remember, do not forget add this to env example file. And for Docker, I have find official PHP Swirl image. And in standard situation, I know that PHP required a lot of PHP extensions. So I recommended creating a Docker file that install extension based on PHP Swirl image. It should look like from PHP Swirl or FPM and install some extensions. But after reading the documentation and looking at the source code, you can see that a lot of things are installed to official Docker Swirl images. Many things and many unnecessary things. For me, it is MySQL. If you do not use Redis, it could be Redis, sockets, and etc. I don't need to use it. I don't want to keep it, store it. I don't want to download it again and again. And most importantly, I don't want to take a risk about vulnerabilities for dependencies that are not needed in the project. So I will not use the official image, but I take the official source code as basis. Remove what we don't need it, install dependency that I'm missing, and update what I can update. So go back to Docker Compose file, create new service, named app, but here I will not use image for now. Let's use construction that call build with two options. First called context, say the core directory for build, enter core project directory or this directory /. And the second option, docker file, it should be a path to docker file. In my case, it's docker php docker file, restart /stopped, container name and volumes. // is a current root directory, column and var www. It's a root directory on Docker container. So all our code changes will have an effect inside Docker container. And one more thing you should know about Docker container. A Docker container runs as long as the process inside it runs. If you are using PHP FPM, the process was hard-coded inside images and called PHP FPM. In our case, our image does not have any process commands. If I try to run it, it will restart endlessly every second. But Docker Compose allows us to override the command in Docker image. It is allowed to redefine many things, but we are interested in the command now. So add command options to app service with PHP artisan octane start. Post options 0.0.0 is required here because Docker doesn't see the host by default. The port is optional, just good practice if some updates changed. So now I can up Docker Compose, but with build option, because we have to build our Docker file. All done. Look at localhost port 8000 and I see Laravel first page. All cool, all work, but it's necessary to demonstrate this case. Let's run simple command to create some file. PHP artisan make rule some rules and go to the file. And as you can see, there is no access to edit this file. This happened because the user inside Docker is a root, but I am not a root. This is a common mistake which has terrible advices how to fix it on the internet. Please remember. Allow, write, read and execute for some file or some directory recursive is not an option. Everyone who write you can use -r777 is your enemy. They wish you bad things. Please be careful. This is an option only when you really mess something up and get it back very quickly. So very easy solution. Go to app service, add user options and write UID and group user ID from environment file. Run two very simple commands in the terminal. Just write ID and group ID of the current user to .env file. I can restart container, make the same command, create some files, some rules, and as you can see, now I can edit everything. And everything looks cool, everything works. You can try close the video, but sorry, we are just begun. Go to Laravel Octane documentation and read in production environments, you should serve Octane application behind a web server. Yes, on production. But magic word, consistency. It is important to make the same environment on development machine and on production. Because web server is mandatory on production, it means all problem of interaction, configuration and etc. better to know at development stage, not after a release. So we have to use Nginx as proxy even for local development. Yes, Nginx, Apache is not an option in my mind. It completely surrendered the positions of the last 10 years. And I'm going back to services, create new server, web server, use image, Nginx, Alpine, important, container name, restart rules, and depends on app. We will back to this and create volume with path to config file, docker nginx confd on the host machine and act nginx confd on the docker container. Also open 80 port to the host. Then I need to create a config file. I will get configuration right from Laravel Octane documentation, but make some changes for my environments. First of all, change root to var www public, remove favicon and robot.txt. I got only API here. Also make small rename of log files and allow to store access log files. And in the end, proxy path, I use container name of app service. Nginx config logic are the same as in PHP FPM. All static files, JavaScript, HTML, indexes, and etc. return by Nginx. All logics going to Laravel Octane. So we must add a new volume, the same as in app service, from cordir to var www, because Nginx should have access to static files. And small life hack here. I advise to set the volume to the log Nginx files into Laravel storage logs. This will provide very easy access to the log files. Now I can close 800 port from app service and go to Docker file using command expose 8000. It will open the port but not to the host, but within the network in which the service is located. Let's restart container, go to localhost without 8000 port, we use Nginx proxy, and I have a bad gateway. Let's look to Nginx error log files, pools that I have easy access, and see no resolver defined. It is normal error inside Docker. We should add a resolver to Nginx config. It should be default DNS of Docker 127.0.0.11. Try again and all cool. I see Laravel page. Now it's time to talk about a very common Dockerization problem. By default, Docker Compose creates a network between all services. Using default network, it is a bad practice, vulnerability. Each service must have access only to services with which it interacts. Nginx should know anything about database. Some abstract services for merging PDF should not have access for WebSocket service. There will be many services in a project. By limiting their scope, we minimize the risk of hacking a particular service. Here you should say, hey dude, we are talking about local development, what a hack, what a service. And I have an answer. The person who will be responsible for deployment, DevOps or admin, will not understand what services they are and what they interact with. And if he going to figure out, then you have a cool specialist. Give him a raise. But again, he will have to ask the developers and waste their time and his own time. And the risk that something is broken still remains, because the interaction between services is usually not tested. We create a simple mocks. So do not use default network for local development. Describe which service interact with which. I will create two networks. First, DB network, driver bridge and custom name. DB service and app service will be in this network. The second network will be Webserver network, will connect app and Webserver services. Now I have to check. I restart Docker Compose and I run the command php artisan migrate. As you can see, the migration were successful. Now it's a little difficult. If we think about it, the app container will start only if developers first installs the composer dependency, our vendors. Without them, the service simply cannot run Octane start command. So all developers should install composer first to work with the project. It is not my choice. I want the whole team to work from Docker. Therefore, we need to start a Docker container and allow to install composer dependency inside it. And here is my solution. I will install the Supervisord first. This is a tool that helps manage processes, start, stop, and etc. Add the install command to the Docker file course. I will also add one more step to Docker file, a command that copies the Supervisord configuration file to the container. And the last step in the Docker file will be the entry point command. This will be the command that will work constantly so the container does not shut down. Supervisor, no daemon. It is important to keep container alive and pass to configuration file. I will create the configuration file, docker php supervisord conf. First section is supervisord global config, no daemon true for sure, and user root. Next section was a program with name Octane, directory where we should run the command var www, and the command php artisan octane start with host and with port. Reload container with build option because we have to rebuild. Install supervisor and see a problem. I should not have specified the root user. Delete it. Restart container without build, and all good, all work. I noticed that two files have appeared in the root directory. It is a supervisord log file file and runtime ID. They are clearly superfluous here. So logs supervisor go to storage logs and runtime ID goes to container runtime directory. We can go back to Docker Compose. As you can see, the container always work, and we do not know if the Octane is actually running or not even started. It is not useful, but Docker Compose have a cool ability, what's called a health check. Health check allows us to specify a command which must be completed successfully, after which the container is marked as healthy. The command is executed as many times as specified in the retry property, every interval seconds, and waiting for the results timeout seconds. So I add a health check to the app service using curl or call if you want to. I check if the root/app is working. This root is from Laravel 11. If you have previous version, it's easy to make your own route. And inside the Webserver service, on depends on, I can set condition service healthy. This is not critical for local development, but in production, if you have a bug tracker, Sentry or New Relic, for example, the app service often start before the database or Redis connected, and the bug trackers gets a bunch of bugs every deployment. Service healthy condition help in this case. And this health check I can copy to Webserver service, but without ports, of course. And the last rule, which is very often ignored by developers. Docker container pulls everything into itself, all files indicated in the context. Very often I see containers overflowing with Git directory, Docker files, temp files, and etc. and etc. So we should always add dockerignore file. My file looks like this. Maybe I forgot something, but we have to understand dockerignore for production is bigger. Production does not need stubs, tests, mocks, everything that parses the code. All this should be ignored for production. I would like to end the video with this, but it makes sense to set up 3 more services. I have to say it. I do not recommend to set up these services right away. How I do it. This only makes sense in the video format. I also often see a situation where someone has set up a bunch of services at once and nobody knows if they are used at all. And the developers have been afraid to turn off that services for years because it's scary to break something. It's safer not to touch. But in my case, I know how they will be used and I have to show you the settings. Repeat at your own risk. I will install Redis first. It is a driver for cache, it is a driver for broadcast, and it is a driver for queue. The same logic as with other services. One recommendation is to configure immediately with a password. In case you need to debug on server, you have opened the port to the world and you know that at least you close Redis with a password. It is a very rare situation, but why not? And of course, health check, Redis CLI ping. This is the default command, and a volume, Redis data. You don't want to lose the cache every time you restart the containers, even locally. While notice Redis, I notice that the file changes has no effects to the Laravel project. So I read the documentation, look at the watch mode, and understand that for this feature is necessary to have Node.js. So I go to Docker file, install Node.js, npm, and git. Install dev npm package Chokidar. I add a watch option to the supervisor command. For test, I just return 111 from main root, recheck. Everything works. Next is the controversial decision. I want to set up a service for queues. Laravel Horizon was created for this. There is nothing better than the Horizon. And here I have to make a choice. Laravel Horizon can be run as separated program in the supervisor. And as variant, it's possible to set up as separated service, separated Docker container. But in Docker community, there is a rule. One container, one process. I recommend following it. This will allow us to limit resources to some service. Allow stop some service from debug, see health check, and of course transfer to separated resources. So I will make such an edit. In supervisor config, remove hard-coded command and change to command from environment variable. Important, the prefix env is added by supervisor. Inside composer yum file, app service, add environment and command without env, php, artisan, octane, start, and etc. Restart, recheck, all good, all works. Now I can deploy the Horizon service. Here there is a catch. This is a feature of the YAML format, no Docker Compose. In YAML format, we can create a reference to some sections. In our case, reference to app service using ampersand and custom name, app in my case. Next, I create a service Horizon using asterisk with name of reference, and using two less than symbol with colon, I can insert and merge app service properties to Horizon service. As a result, we get all properties duplicated from app service. The properties below will overwrite the properties from the app service. So image, restart, build, and etc. will be the same as in the app service. Here we get consistency between different services but the same image. But environment will rewrite command to PHP Artisan Horizon. Container name also should be unique. Also, I have to change the networks. Webserver should not know anything about Horizon. And a health check. Be careful. A health check here is for example. It is a batch health check. In future, I'm going to look at the Sparty health packages and use it. Please do not use my health check. This is an example because the video is too long. Next, I have to install Laravel Horizon and give you one more advice. The official Laravel documentation say we should add publish Laravel Horizon vendors to post update command. Instead, I suggest adding public vendor directory to gitignore and adding publish command also to the post install hook. It is useful because vendor is just a set of minified JavaScript, HTML and CSS files for Horizon preview. This code doesn't have any payload, it always installed with composer packages. No one will review it, no one will recheck, so adding so minor to the code is very easy. But in my solution we save ourselves from the need to store a bunch of unnecessary code in Git. So Docker compose up and go to localhost Horizon. All good, Horizon active. And the last service for today, schedule service. It's simple, we just have to run the command every minute. And here I got one advice. Instead of using cron, I recommended use superchronic. It is a cron-like utility designed to work inside containers, allowing the use of environment variables, managing output, and ability to run as active process. Personally, I'm more interested in the possibility to integrate with Sentry, but let's discuss that another time. So add install superchronic to Docker file, create very basic cron tab file, execute command php artisan scheduler run every minute. In Docker compose file, I make the same trick as with Horizon service. Just change a command, container name, network, and health check. Be careful, health check just for overwriting. It's test health check. Do not use it. Restart with build. Everything seems to work, but I cannot fully test it. This is another reason why I don't recommend deploying everything at once. It is not clear how the team should check these decisions, and it is not okay to commit some test methods and push it to repository. Finally, I can uninstall Laravel Salt. It is no longer needed. We must delete everything that we do not use. Also, small changes in the Supervisord config. I added variables to split the logs file names. And it is important, there are no intervals for started commands in the Supervisor. In my opinion, this is a big omission, but we have a poorly documented option, start tries. Try tries is the number of attempts to run command. Each attempt is delayed by the number of seconds of the previous attempts. This means that Supervisor will try to run the command every 1, 2, 3, 6 and factorial of 20 seconds. It is not obvious, not useful, but it's work fine. I deleted the project several times and set up it again with clear cache, of course. Launching containers, install dependency and waiting for the service to become healthy, it's easy and not difficult. It's also necessary to explain why I installed Git to app container. Since we are already addicted to Node.js, I can override the pre-commit and pre-push Git hooks by running the command in the container. In this way, we don't depend on the Node version in development machine at all. And of course, I'm not going to install Node into production. And be sure to document the setup commands into README file. One tip: do not forget to specify the command format in the markdown. Use shell or bash, and you can run it by clicking on your IDE. If you have a thought, hey, you are talking about consistency here, but You build containers from the scratch each time on each machine. Got my respect, and please wait for the next video. That's all. It was a big video, it was very difficult to mount. You can find any codes by following to the link into description. And if you want to support me, please support Ukraine. The Russians still want to kill me and my family. They are still threatening the war and still kill, rob and rape. Do not forget about this and help Ukrainians to stop them. Thank you.